part 2 of the Lowthers of Wilton, and this video is about Lilah, Charlotte, Sarah White, and where she came from, what her family history is before they got married. Now, to look at Lilah, Charlotte, Sarah White's background, you have to go back a long way. It starts with this place, Holdenby Palace, or Holdenby Palace, I think it's sometimes pronounced. It was built by a guy called Sir Christopher Hatton in 1583. It was absolutely enormous. In fact, in its day it was the biggest house in England. And he built it to impress Elizabeth I. And when he finished it, it was said that he wouldn't live in it until Elizabeth I had stayed there. Anyway, the cost of it was so enormous that within a short time this Christopher Hatton had gone bust, and he died in 1591. So he didn't live there very long, and it was sold to King James I. It was 78,000 square feet. Gigantic. Anyway, after the Civil War it was sold to a parliamentarian, a fellow called Captain Baines, and he saw a lot of profit in this place. And he demolished it and sold it piecemeal, sold the stone, the timbers, the windows, the doors, the floors. He sold the whole shooting match except for a kitchen wing, which for some reason or other remained. Anyway, it was bought by John Churchill, who was the first Duke of Marlborough, and he bought this place in 1709. Bought the estate. There wasn't much of the house left, but it was a big estate. These two had 7 children. This chap is particularly interesting. His first wife, she died when she was 23 from smallpox. This is his second wife, and she died when she was only 34. And she had smallpox but recovered from it, but the after effects obviously took years of her life. Anyway, he took a third wife who was only 15. His mother was absolutely appalled, and he married her in 1717, which was only 5 years before his death. This woman called Judith. And in those 5 years before he died, this Judith, who was, as I say, was only 15 when they got married, she had 3 children, one after the other, and they all died before the age of 2. Absolutely tragic. But he was also involved in the South Sea bubble. He was one of the main sponsors of this South Sea adventure, where people were piling money into the South Seas, intent on making a fortune, and like all bubbles the whole thing just exploded, and everybody lost huge amounts of money. So he was in disgrace, and as a consequence he resigned all his posts, although later on he seems to be reinstated to most of them. But he had an Act of Parliament passed whereby he could pass his estates and title through the female line, which was very unusual. And this lady here, Henrietta, she inherited the estates and the title, and she became the second Duchess of Marlborough. And she had 5 children, but her son died 2 years before her. only daughters left. So the estate then passed to her nephew, this chap here, Charles. This chap was a very, very lucky man. His brother Robert, who was the Earl of Sutherland, he died in 1729, so he inherited his title and estates. And in 1733, when his aunt died, he became the third Duke of Marlborough. How lucky can you get? And he and his wife, this Elizabeth Trevor, they had these children. And when he died in 1758, it came to this fella, George Spencer. These were all Spencers. And he became the fourth Duke of Marlborough. And he had married this Lady Caroline Russell, a rich lady in her own right. Now these two, they had 7 children. There's Caroline, Elizabeth, Charlotte, George Spencer Churchill, Anne, Amelia and Francis. The main line went down through the eldest son, this chap, George Spencer Churchill. They continued down there for, well, until today they're still going. And they married into very rich families. I mean, they married into the Londonderrys, Marquess of Queensberry there. They had huge estates in Northern Ireland and in County Durham. The one in County Durham was sitting on a massive coal field, so there's huge amounts of money there. And they also married in rich American women, one of whom was the Vanderbilts, big in railroads and shipping. It was quite common for British aristocracy to marry rich American women. And the aristocracy, of course, needed the needed the cash, and the rich American women, they liked British titles, which sort of elevated them into high society. So shallow. And it's this line which is the line for Lady Diana Spencer. We're down here somewhere. But we concerned ourselves with this lady here, the eldest daughter, the first child, Caroline, who married this Henry Agar or Ellis. He was the second Viscount Cliveden of Gowran, an Irish family. And at some time they had bought this Holdenby house from the Marlborough family. So we'll go on and have a look at these. Their family seat, Gowran Castle, is now lying derelict. There's a video of it in Derelict Places of Ireland, I think it's called. It's up for sale at the moment. If you fancy it, you need a few million to put it right, man. So this is this eldest daughter of the Duke of Marlborough, who had married this fella here, and they had bought Holdenby Estate from the Marlboroughs. And they had 4 children. This Diana, this fella who became the 3rd Viscount Cliveden, Lucia and Leopold. When you're looking at these things, you can pick up odd pieces of information. This fella on his death certificate apparently said he'd died from softening of the brain. Whatever that means. But in 1861 he married this woman here with her grandname, Eliza Horatia Frederica Seymour. He died in 1866, which was only 5 years after he got married. So, he had 3 children in 5 years. Now, after his death, this Eliza Seymour, or Eliza Clifton as she was now, she rebuilt Hornby Palace. It was called Hornby House at this stage. She started rebuilding it in 1873, and it took 5 years to rebuild it. In the middle of this, she got married. She remarried in 1875, and she had another child after these to her second husband. But when she was widowed, of course, she was only 33, and she was described by some chap, must have fancied his chances because she was hell of a rich, as lovely to behold, full of grace and graciousness of demeanour. But she didn't die at Hornby House. She died at a place called Burr House in Kent, which is now a private hospital. And she and the third Viscount had 3 children in their very short marriage. Georgina, who was only 2 when she died, Lilah, and this Henry George. This fella inherited the Clifton title, but he died unmarried, and so the estate and title went to this fella here. The estates in Ireland went to this Leopold, who became the 5th Viscount of Clifton. So that left Lilah. She married Luke White in 1884, who was the 3rd Baron Annley of Annley and Rathbone. So a great title. And they lived in Hornby House. So on her mother's second marriage, I think she'd gone, and this lady here and her husband took on Hornby House. Although he had a grand title, his predecessors, one of them anyway, I think the main predecessor was a bookie, and also owned a lottery, so they were making their money out of gambling. But he couldn't believe his luck. So Lilah and Luke had 3 children. This Luke, who inherited the titles, the Annley titles in Ireland, and the estate that went with them. Lilah Charlotte Sarah White, and a girl called Lucy, who was born in 1890. And this daughter married Colonel John George Lowther of Wilton Castle, and she had spent her childhood at Hornby House. And this is the said place. It's not a particularly good photograph, it's a bit blurred, but it's enormous, and the estate covers about 2,000 acres of rich farmland. But the thing to notice are these 2 arches, just one there and one there. And these are the remains of the Hornby Palace. And these were the entrance and exit to the courtyard, just to give you some idea of the size of the place.